on the 17th of October 2024. A couple of things to begin with. Got a lot to get through. If we've got any queries or comments to make on any investment side of the fund, if we can sort of hold those through till November meeting, which is all about investments, and we've got Port Coast managers coming into that meeting. Let's be quite clear and work to the agenda items and specifically what's in those agenda items. The other thing is if we can all speak up quite well because we're not too great at hearing and not lots of the microphones for us to really have. So if I have to remind you, I'll remind you, but don't be upset that I'm reminding you. Okay, we'll make a start then. So apologies then, Tom, please.
Thank you. We have apologies from Councillor Mrs. Oakham.
Thank you. Item 2, declaration of members' interest. We'll go around the table.
Active member, the pension scheme.
Yeah, same active member. Or
member going. Yeah.
Active and deferred member of the pension fund.
Receipt of a pension from funds.
George.
I think this is just for transparency rather than a declaration, Chair, but I'm the shareholder representative at Port Coast for the South Yorkshire Pension Fund, so it's one of the confidential items.
Yeah. Yeah. So minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of September this year. And we've got their pages 5 to 10. That is something you've all cast your eye over. Is anything in there that you don't think would prove to the day? If you can raise it now. I'll ask you all the permission to sign those, and if that's okay, anybody get to?
Agreed.
Lovely. Thank you very much. We're on to the first major item, item 4, which is what my infinite chair, George Graham over there. So that's over to you then, George.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the key points I'd like to draw out are at the top of page 13 in terms of the areas where the board gained assurance at its last meeting and the areas where the board is looking to gain further assurance at its subsequent meetings or wants to probe a bit further. I think the key areas to probe further are around plans to address the backlogs of administration work that have been identified by West Yorkshire. Now, it's important to say that having backlogs of administration work is not unusual. Most LGPS funds have some sort of backlog. So we're seeking assurance about how those are being dealt with and the plans for addressing them. And we're pursuing this afternoon assurance from internal audit over the overall controls within the operation of the fund. And we'd be looking to see the completion of the assessment against the general code, which the fund has conducted the work it can, but is dependent on external suppliers to complete the remainder of that work. So we'd be wanting to see that work completed. Let's take any questions, Chair.
Yeah, it's one thing that I've always been a little confused about, and it's the interactions between the board and the committee. And I did wonder who at the end of the day is the sort of final manager. For instance, the West Yorkshire administration in relation to any performance issues that are observed. Is it the board or is it the committee?
So the committee have the role as the ultimate decision makers for pension fund. They are the responsible body the board's role is as an oversight body, a bit like the overview and scrutiny committees that the council has of some of its committees. So it is for the committee to, if they have any issues, they can raise them, etc. The board might be doing a deeper dive into certain areas and see more detail. They don't look at the investments or the funding at all, but the body that appointed West Yorkshire is therefore responsible for that is the pension committee.
So if there is an issue identified by the board, which they quite rightly can interrogate, should we say, as part of their sort of overall assurance scrutiny type role, and irrespective of that, inactions mean that the performance issue, whatever it is, may not be addressed. At the end of the day, it's for the board then to report it to the committee and say we need to take action.
Absolutely, yes.
And indeed, ultimately, in certain cases, the board could report to the regulator in its own name.
You could.
Could.
It would not do that without having discussed it with the committee first, and that can be the ultimate.
No, I'm just trying to ensure that it is the committee that's in control of the administrator at the end of the day.
Yeah, the committee makes that appointment.
Eddie?
Thank you, Chairman. Well, before I go on to ask my question of George, just a matter of interest, I think David will have here to this. Pension committee members are welcome to sit in the board meetings. I've done that in the past to listen to how they work things out. Doesn't mean to say you have the right to speak unless you're invited to speak, but it's interesting to see. And of course, the board meetings are directly after the pension meeting, so it is a long day that you see the board people like David has to sit through both of them. So my question to George is, with the introduction of the pensions dashboard, will it make life easier for West Yorkshire? Maybe Matt would probably answer that, I don't know, but or has it no bearing at all?
I think there are a number of different points of view. In the short term, I don't think the dashboard makes life easy for anybody. In the longer term, it may help with improving data quality because it's a way of trying to pass the responsibility for certain elements of data quality to scheme members by making scheme members responsible for it. But I'm sure Matt can add far more detail to that than I can.
Good morning, everybody. Yes, I think the short term, it's going to make life more difficult for us. To improve our data, as George said, we need to do some work. That's us as the administrator and here as pension fund and your employers. So there is more work to do, and to make that more difficult, we have a timeline. We have a deadline of delivery, which is October next year, and we're going to have to test that, and it has to be online. So in the short term, I absolutely agree, there's more work for everybody. In the long term, there's more responsibility on the scheme members, and hopefully it would then ease pressures. Backlogs have already been mentioned, but it might ease pressure on backlogs, because we would hope if scheme members have found us through a digital platform, they can then access their benefit values via portals, they can do their own estimates, they can update their own records. So the long term, and it is long-term journey, should be easier for us all. At least I think that's the hope. I don't know if George agrees with that.
I think that's the hope. I think we live in hope and die somewhere else.
Anyone else? I think. Sorry, Tom.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. George, in the areas of, shall I say, further information you want to look at is improvement in conditional data scores. I know your predecessor, Rod, would bring this up regularly. How comfortable is probably the wrong word, but how confident are you that there is a path to improvement and it's not sort of just keeping its head above water where it is?
I think what we're seeing is increased improvement. I mean, on a personal level, I would like to see that scoring in excess of 90%. And I'm sure Matt would like to see it in excess of 90%. The challenge in getting it there in one fell swoop is that that would consume an enormous amount of resource for marginal gain in terms of any direct benefit to scheme members, because the sorts of things that appear as issues there are things that when a scheme member comes to retire or there is an event, the scheme member's data gets cleaned up at that point anyway.
Right.
So the fact that it's where it is not great, but doing anything as a major project to address it beyond the sort of exercises that West Yorkshire will do as a routine, I think is not a sensible deployment of resources.
I think where I stand on it really is it's fact that you can expand on those items in your report. I think the follow on probably more clear to the members. But you know, I've never lived in hope. I've always liked facts and figures and things like when it happens. But you know, for instance, the board's looking for assurance. It's the item of the backlog. Well, the backlog has been hanging around in the backlog for years, as far as I can see. It's always surfacing, guidance, surfacing. So I just hope your long-term plans to put that right does work. They're not too long. So, you know, to bring it on a bit further into the report, I don't want George to keep putting that in his report over the next 3 or 4 months. I think someone needs to. Lovely. We'll move on now to item 5, which is the pension fund update report. That's with Jo, I believe.
It is, yes. So thank you, Chairman. This is the standard quarterly update paper. It's got some recommendations that the committee consider and discuss the report and agree whether any action or additional information is required, and that they approve the extension of the investment consultant's contract for 2 years to 31st of December 2026. Key points that I'd like to highlight in the report are firstly, paragraph 1.9 on page 17. That updates the committee on the funding level with the actuary's report attached to Appendix C. This shows the funding levels increased slightly over the quarter to 96.5% as at 31st of March on a roll forward basis. So that should be 31st of June. Section 4 on page 18 updates the committee on activity with Border to Coast. We had a good 2 days in Barnes at the beginning of the month, all the partner funds, to look at additional areas for collaboration outside of the investment and to prepare for the meeting that we had with HMT and MHCLG as part of the pensions investment review. Further information on that meeting was shared in this week's weekly email. The last joint committee was held on the 26th of September. Key points from the agenda are set out at paragraph 4.7. Question on divestment from the independent investment advisor Paul Watson was raised by Councillor Strengle, and I shared the response with the committee in the weekly email of the 7th of October. Next meeting will be on the 26th of November, and members are reminded that any questions can be fed through Councillor Strengle and Councillor Coupland. Section 5 sets out a recommendation to approve the first extension to the investment consultant's contract to 31st of December 2026. Hymans Robertson were appointed back in January 2022 for an initial 3-year period with two 2-year extensions. Hopefully the committee are content with the service that Hymans are providing and are happy to approve the extension. Section 6 on page 21 shares information on the latest Section 13 report from the Government Actuaries Department, with a paper from Barnett Waddingham summarising the outcomes for Lincolnshire. Paragraph 6.6 to 6.9 set out the results against the 4 areas of compliance, consistency, solvency and long-term cost efficiency. And I'm pleased to report the fund met all the criteria for the Section 13 valuation. And Section 7 on page 23, you may have noticed there's a rather chunky manual on your desks. This is new for all committee and board members at the suggestion of Councillor Copeland, and this will hopefully be a useful aid memoir for you. This will be a living document and will be updated manually. So any feedback on its contexts or areas that you think are missing would be welcome. So please do let me know. And then finally, there's an opportunity for members to discuss any training events undertaken since the last meeting, and a reminder that all training opportunities are shared in the weekly email. So I shall stop there and be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well,
Again, sorry to be first all the time with my hand up, but it's probably better to have questions than one. Just got two questions. I'll deal with the easy one first, and that's to do with the manual, which I thought was very, very good. It would be obviously it does exist now, and it will be very useful to committee members, you know, particularly at the beginning of their session on this committee. I do wonder whether you want these back at the end of the session that councillors are elected to, particularly those that aren't going forward, so that you can issue it again to somebody else, or are you quite happy to prepare new ones for people?
I'm quite happy for it to be kept as a memento. We will be updating it on an annual basis.
I'm sure the file will become very useful for something. So that's the easy one. The second question is to do with the section 1.4 fund performance. And I'm talking about this as a still an 8-year member of the pensions committee in terms of the overall performance, which is what we're here to ensure that we do get performance to pay our pensioners. The graph shows that we have underperformed the benchmark since inception, and we should be outperforming the benchmark by 0.75%. And so you could add a bit onto those bars, which would make the situation look even worse. The situation is what it is. You know, there's nothing that we can do about it in terms of what's happened since inception. I just wondered whether we are performing particularly poorly in Lincolnshire, or is this the overall situation within funds within the LGPF sector?
So
Because it does suggest that if we are underperforming the benchmark, some people are benefiting from our underperformance up to a certain extent.
So we have the annual performance report later in on this agenda, and that will talk about the local authority universe. So perhaps I can defer that question to Ben.
all right, thank you.
Chairman, again, on the manual, I think it's really useful. Is it possible to get an electronic version that we can save to our devices? Because first I don't want to be bringing that to each meeting, but if it was on here, we would reference it if we needed to.
Yes, I can do that. It was requested that it was a paper one for ease of flicking through, I think.
And secondly, I attended with Joe the LGC Pension Investment Conference in Birmingham on the 11th to 12th of September, which was very interesting as it always is. Range of topics covered, particularly the usual ones around potential mergers, consolidations of pools and funds. There was a presentation by the pension minister, unfortunately recorded, so there wasn't the opportunity to pose any questions or anything like that. But at least there was some pointers from there, which is obviously emerging as time goes on. Obviously, we have your meeting with them in early October around where the pension funds are going. I think the other interesting one was on some of the workshops, agriculture featured quite heavily in terms of an investment instrument. So there's certainly a couple of workshops that covered that. So I just thought that was an interesting emerging instrument that seems to be coming forward.
Very solar farm.
No, it wasn't. So, I'd certainly recommend it for members to go, and the dates next year on the 12th and the 13th of September, again in Birmingham, which place I thought was a better venue than when it previously been held in Leeds, which was split. So, thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, I'll just go back to item 4 because there's a recommendation there, George's report, that the committee considers an answer report if we can review that for the record then, Thomas. So we'll go back to the recommendations here on item 4. We've got on page 15 that 1, consider and discuss the report and agree whether any action or additional information is required. I think we've done that, and Joe will be answering my question a little bit fully later on. 2, approve the first extension of the investment consultant's contract for 2 years to 31st December 26. We agree. Yeah. Move on to item 6, which is the pensions administration report, and this is where that comes in on West Yorkshire.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, everybody. This is the West Yorkshire report on the Lincolnshire Pension Fund, and it's the administration report of the period 1st of April 24 to the 30th of June 24. The first item, point 1, is about performance and benchmarking. We've already mentioned performance. We use a system called GPM by Civica. We use workflow, we diarise all our processes and calculations. And in the fact, I believe that there is a full set of the KPIs and those that met and those that did not. In this report, I've just pulled out the ones that did not meet. And I'll run through these for your benefit. The penultimate column to the right shows that there are priority. So 1 would be something to do with payment, and 3 would be something to do with, say, just an administration change, maybe a change of address or something like that. So you can see where they sit and our order of priority and urgency. So dependent pension setup, it is a priority 1, but it was just issued with timing. The information was coming back just as payroll was being run. We can't pay people just on any day of the month. So these values were paid on the following payroll. Which meant there was a delay and the KPI was not met. Interfund linkings actual. Now, an interfund is a transfer between one LGPS fund and another, and the linking defines that actually it's nothing external. It will be Lincolnshire to Lincolnshire, or there might be other records that we hold on our file, so it could be West Yorkshire to Lincolnshire. There are a lot of cases across all of the interfunds. And it is one of the concerns, and you've mentioned backlogs, and it is one of the causes of backlogs. And I'll reference a period of last year where the government actuarial department declared that the factors had to be revised. That's the factors used in these calculations, and they didn't just pull those factors and barred us from using them. They didn't replace them with any new ones. So consequently, we couldn't actually produce or process any of these interfund linkings. So we are looking at the older cases and the most important cases, those that may be affected by taxation. Any benefit statements that need to be provided, and then there is annual allowance tax, the pension savings statements. So all of that is rolled up into our priority list, and we do that on age and size basis. We have seen an upturn in the work. In fact, it says here in my report that we are now receiving the highest numbers of interfund linking requests since February 2023. The same reasons apply to interfund linking quotes as well as the actual. So that's the third failure. And then interfund outs, this is where we're actually calculating the value of the transfer of the benefit to an external LGPS fund, maybe to Kent or Essex or wherever it might be. We don't have that other detail. We're calculating the value of the benefits and we're showing the other funds the values of the members' benefits. We don't have a system currently that permits us to do these calculations automatically. This is to do with the removal of the age discrimination, sometimes referred to as the cloud. We are having to perform those calculations manually, so that's slower. And because of the remedy, because of the cloud, there's a second set of calculations that need to be performed. They're also manual, so that slowed the process down. We are waiting for uploads and developments on the system, should be coming in the next month or so, that should start to release the blocks on those calculations, so we're back on the system and automated. Monthly postings, it's being developed between MP3 and MP2. Sometimes you'll see it referred to as MC3, but I was talking to our head of finance, and it's definitely MP3 because monthly postings, not monthly contributions. That means this includes data, not just cash, so it's more inclusive. And we've been loading all the information and dual running the two systems, MP2, the old one, MP3, the new one. And I believe as of last month, we've actually met our target for the first time. So that's improving. Deferred benefits set up on leaving. This is priority 3. There are no benefits to pay currently. What we do is once we get the notification in from the employer, we will write to the member within a 2-month period to say you have deferred benefits with leadership. That meets the statutory obligation of this fund. When we have the opportunity, the time and the resource, we will then follow that communication up with the actual value of the deferred benefits. And of course, if the member contacts us in between, wants to know what it is, wants to transfer the benefits out, then we can start the process and that will go to the top of the priority pile. This is an area what I would call resource and can be a concern as a backlog, unlike the transfers and the gag factors. But I can refer you to the risk register and risk number 9 that I updated in June. Now I don't have the numbers to hand. Since September last year, we have processed 57% of the outstanding deferred benefit backlogs. So we have targeted that with resource. People within the teams have a role to play in removing the older cases off the list. We're not out of the woods. There are more coming in every day, but I can demonstrate there that we do have actual focus on that. And if you do need some numbers, I can provide those at another committee meeting. That's all right. Lower priority cases, a request from DWP for some information. Again, doesn't affect benefits, no timescales on that. So that took us a bit of time to get that done. And then generally speaking, member details, we process and update really quite well. We're talking thousands of numbers of cases. So I think our target is 100%. We're at 98.16%. With this is where we go back to the employer with a query. So there's a delay in us being actually able to update the record. We're looking for more facts, more information. Point 2, shared service update and staffing. So this is about West Yorkshire staffing. Service centre has 6 senior pension officer vacancies. It is a concern. We are struggling to recruit to that role. Partly because there's a very small pool of pension professionals, local government pension professionals in the country. So this isn't something unique to West Yorkshire Pension Fund. However, within our own organisation, we require a pension officer to have 3 years experience and a qualification, or in education to gain a qualification before we would consider promoting them. We've exhausted our internal pool. And a lot of the people now that want to go for promotions actually have less than 3 years worth of experience. So what we intend to do, and we have started to do this is a bit beyond this reporting period, we're going to recruit additional pensions officers. So we can do that's what seniors do, they check. But the idea is if you haven't got to wait 3 years, those existing pension officers which don't quite make the criteria will meet the criteria in 6, 12, 18 months, and then we can then promote those into the senior roles. So we're looking ahead. So we're recruiting the numbers to do the work. There's some short-term pressure on checking that work, but then we expect to release that as our pensions officers become experienced and are promoted. There are no vacancies on the technical team or the employer relation team, which is good. With regards to resourcing, I've probably touched upon this in 2.2. We're already, looking at the backlogs, the linking to the annual benefit statements, and we're actually putting resource to process the older cases. I've talked about the senior pensions officers. Looking further afield to staffing, we have a graduate program. We had 3 graduates start this year. We've got another one's already in line to start next year. We've contacted all local educators, not schools, but more the sixth form colleges. And we've actually had 3 sixth formers in this summer, kind of a bit of an induction program, try to sort of sell the benefits of a career in pensions. And it's been a bit of an eye-opener for us, really, because it's not just dull processing. You know, we've got, you know, investment managers, investment analysts. You can have a career in HR, you can have a career in payroll, as well as your traditional administrator, all within a local government pension outfit. We got some really good reports via their school. Whether those students will come aboard, I don't know, but we are chipping away. Those that don't want to go to university at 18 could be a good fit for us. And we are targeting some sixth formers. So the 3 students came from the Leeds Maths School, kind of figured if they like numbers, you know, they might like working for us. I'm not sure it's true, but anyway, it's a start. So we are trying to look outside the box at staffing and resourcing. Point 2.3, audits, internal audits. We had 1 or transfers in and the report back was excellent. Looking at budgets, just to the bottom of the table, we are on course for cost per head £18.42 and the projected cost for next year at £20.14. We have the risk register, risk 2. We're still waiting for that the sealed contract for the shared service. I know we've chased our legal department and we are blockage. And I've mentioned risk 9 and working on the legacy and backlogs. Rebranding. I wasn't here. I think I was on leave at the last meeting, and I know you and our managing director was here. Talked about branding. It was taken to the joint advisory group. I suppose that's our equivalent of yourself. That wasn't met with a great deal of support at the time. But as I understand it, you will be taking that back periodically and pushing about branding of a shared service and everyone that's in that West Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, Hounslow, Barnet. And I don't know if you use our websites at all, but we have a brand new website. We're always looking for feedback. So please go on, have a play. If you don't like it, tell us. If you do like it, please tell us. If there's anything between. There are things in there, we find it on a daily basis. We have a team of testers, 3,000 people look at our website. That's from 5,000 members and 700 or 800 employers. So it's being well tested as it's being built and developed, but that doesn't mean to say they encompass everything. And then point 3, the last point, is just about lump sums. We hear a lot in the press about lump sums, lifetime allowance and removal of the lifetime allowance as a taxation. Would have thought it made life easier for the LGPS. Our lump sums are capped or were capped at 25% of the capital value. What that has meant, even though the lifetime allowance limit has been removed, the lump sum, tax-free lump sum, is capped at £268,275. We will pay a lump sum above that amount, but anything that exceeds that amount will be taxed at 40%. It's extraordinarily rare, and as of yet we haven't got anybody. We'll let you know if we do. if you don't know them, you probably will. It's always high earners and long servers. So I just thought I'd bring that to your attention. That is it for me. That's very quick. I'm very happy to take questions.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I just thought, as someone who works in an employer, and I personally do the monthly posting, I just thought I'd bring a bit of colour to that for everyone. And that previously, employers used to just submit a spreadsheet, happy-go-lucky, whether there was errors or not. And then in the weeks and days after that, you'd get emails to say, please rectify this error. And, being a busy person, you sometimes would miss these emails. And then I can see how that's where the quality of the data was compromised. Whereas now, when you do the monthly posting, it comes up with the errors straight away, so you can't submit it without rectifying the errors. So it's a lot better, and I can see how the system could grow and improve. I think it's a lot better for the employer as well. And it also this definitely needs monitoring. Like when we did our first monthly posting, we got 100% score.
Hey.
No, that was Diaston School. So yeah, I definitely think it's a good way forward.
Thank you.
I can't remember what it was. It might have been less than that.
How many members?
About 70. Yeah. So. Maybe finished.
Thank you. Just a question on the branding. If I say it's really disappointing.
Yes.
This is something that was promised to us back in 2014 before we went into the shared service agreement. I did look at the JAG paper I could find on the shared service, and there was no mention of it in there. So
Right.
would you be able to share
I'll talk to you, and I've got to call him tomorrow. And
what meant, because whether it's something that we could input into, because we had yet another example of a scheme member thinking they're in the West Yorkshire Fund recently on something that Michelle was on, move to shared cost ABCs. So, it is an issue for us. It's something we've asked for a decade. So to say they're just not particularly interested is really disappointing.
yes, totally get that, support that. I'll raise that tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just going back to the staff aid, the 6 senior pension officers that are vacant, that's out of how many?
I'm not sure exactly how many pensions officers, but I think as a fund, our staffing levels our staffing numbers are about 206, 208, something like that. To the best of my knowledge, they are they're the only pension officer vacancies. I've got 2 vacancies on the government side, which may be converted to administration roles. I'm just having that sort of check internally. It is, as staffing levels go, on the last report I saw, which must now be a year to 18 months old, that nationally LGPS funds are running at about 11% of vacancies. Well, on the administration side, and 200 people, 6 people isn't so bad. However, because of the volumes, and you've already identified volumes and backlogs, I've mentioned the cloud, talked about dashboard. We don't think, we can afford to leave those vacancies unfilled. And that's why there is a continual recruitment policy. And it's why we're looking at getting as many people in, even if they're pensions officers, and looking to recruit quicker than we could usually to the SPOs. But as far as I'm aware on the admin side, it is just those 6.
Thank you. And you've mentioned obviously your graduate scheme, looking longer term. Do you do apprentices or high level apprenticeships?
We're looking at that, and it might be that the 18-year-olds, if they don't go on to further education, they may come in as the apprenticeships. They will be the people coming in at pensions officer level. Again, we're looking at pension officer level, not further up, because the graduates are coming in at least low management, and they would be 21, 22. So that's still to be developed. We only sort of dipped our toe in the water this year, but we're learning, because we've not targeted 18-year-old students before to employ them, and we've only looked at West Yorkshire. I don't know, maybe there's organisations in Lincolnshire that we could target as well and speak to them. I don't know. More we can speak to, the easier it is to.
I can just add to that, something I raised at our last shared service meeting, actually about expanding the recruitment to cover Lincolnshire, because we do have an office here in Lincoln. The members in that office are rapidly approaching ages where they will be able to retire, or can already retire. So the question was put to the shared service following concerns raised within that team there, that was the office purposely being run down because no recruitment has happened there for a number of years. The response there was absolutely not, because I think it is important that we have that base here in Lincoln, so members can come in and speak to somebody if they need to. So something that was going to be taken away was ensuring that advertisement isn't just Bradford based, West Yorkshire based. We can put it on our website. We have done in the past at Lincolnshire. So it's trying to be more joined up in that recruitment. Whilst there are still people in the office here that can assist with the training, etc. So just as some further backup on that, that will expand the pool that you're looking at.
Eddie?
So a question for you, Matt. I brought up the pensions dashboard earlier, just as I suspect, what's that stupid thing I've got in the house, to ask questions. Yeah, it's always listening in to whatever you say. Question about the pensions dashboard, and I've just had an email from Haywood, preparing for pensions dashboard. That worries me. Sorry.
More? I think, Matt, you just surprised me that all the problem we've had with backlogs and resourcing and stuff, and it's gone on for a fair while. I can't say you've ever come here and give us an indication of how you're going to get over it till today. You know, what are you going to do about it? I thought this is a problem, should have been dealing with it a year ago. You might say you were, but it didn't work out. So that's my point on resourcing, and I imagine, unless the committee say different, they do as well. The branding issue is something that we've all agreed that we want to push.
Yeah.
So if you get a null and void response from your committee that you go back to, then we need to know ASAP. We're quite strong about it.
No, I can feel that you're quite passionate. That's coming across, and I know Joe mentions it to me frequently. So this isn't something that's a surprise. So I am talking to Ewan tomorrow. So I will raise it with Ewan. As you know, he's our managing director, and then response will come from that. Is that all
I
right?
asked Tom to just strengthen that in the minutes, really. I believe your service goes through till 2027, I believe.
Not sure.
2033.
That's it.
9 years.
It was a 9-year extension with 3-year break points, because depending what happens nationally, there may be changes put upon us. But it was a 9-year extension that was agreed last year, that started from 1st of April this year. Three year
Where does
periods.
2027 come in?
Could be a break.
First 3-year potential break.
Potential break. What does that mean?
So we have an opportunity. We would be looking at it in probably March 26 to see if we were content with the service, if we needed to go out to re-tender, or if we were content to continue with the next. Well, we don't even need to get approval. We just need to make sure we've looked at it and decide, do we want to continue or not? So it's not extensions as such. It's a 9-year contract, but with the opportunity to come out after every 3 years. There are other times that we could terminate the contract that are all within the agreement.
Thank you. Making that clear. Right, so any other comments? I've got a recommendation there on page 51 there, that the committee discussed the activity and performance of administration service during the last quarter, which we've got much going away with them. Going to move on to item 7, which is the risk register annual review. You again, Joe, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So this is the annual review of the fund's risk register and risk management policy. Recommendations we have here are that the committee review and approve both documents. There haven't been any changes to the risk management policy, which is attached at Appendix A, and following a full review done in 2022 on the risk register, which is at Appendix B, there haven't been any changes in its format. We do bring any changes or additions to the risk register to each quarterly meeting, in this fund update report that I did earlier. And there have been 2 new risks added since the last meeting. So paragraph 4 sets out the risks that we have in the risk register across the 3 areas of governance, investments and funding, operational and people. And the 2 new risks that we've added are both within the governance area. The first one is G3, which concerns any changes imposed by government on the structure of pools or funds. Now, we've given this limited assurance due to the current uncertainty of the outcome of the pensions investment review that's underway. However, the fund is actively involved with Border to Coast and other stakeholders to feed into that review and hopefully help shape the outcome of it. The second new risk is at G4, and this is something that pensions regulator has recommended should be in our risk registers as part of the new general code. So this is looking at the relationship the fund has with the administering authority, where the potential conflicts of interest need to be recognised and managed. Now, this has been given substantial assurance, as it felt there's a clear understanding of the role and responsibilities of the administering authority in its role as scheme manager. I didn't plan on going through each risk individually, but I'll happily take any questions. Thank you.
Any on that?
Yeah,
Anything?
page 101. Risk is in the red area for the loss of key staff and loss of knowledge, skills. Is that where you do it?
So that's the risk in the red area. Oh, it's actually in the amber area on the first one. It's just the red is the
Target risk score is in the amber, current risk score is in the red.
yeah. It is actually amber. It looks like it's in the red, but it's just the three ones that are in the red. Yeah, it is a concern. It is one where we do have limited purely because of the small number of people in the team. It's an incredibly specialist and technical area. We have the issues obviously in the administration, which is nationwide. It's not just our administrators that have that staffing issue. It's something that is across the LGPS. It's very hard to recruit to the roles in my team. It's hard to recruit to the roles in the administration team. So there's not a lot more we can do. We have got new members of the team. Over the last couple of years, we've had the approval for that, one of which we've got in place, the other, which is currently vacant, which we will be bringing in once the current, the newest person in the team has gone through a certain period of training. Because when you're in a small team, trying to bring somebody new in, do all the training is obviously incredibly time consuming. So we're phasing that in. So we're doing all we can. But I think it's one of those areas where, because of the speciality, it's always quite difficult to recruit. We do well at retaining staff, but it is just if somebody goes, actually being able to get somebody to replace them.
The other thing that concerns me is the G3 on page 94, which is changes imposed by the government of the structural pools and funds. With our own going down, and I imagine rates will probably a lot more about that than the other. But that's it. That's the big thing for me. Such a big unknown. A lot of things you can know what's coming, you can plan, but when something smacks you in the face, which it could do by Christmas, could be big red out.
And I think all we can do to continue to try and mitigate that as much as we can is what we are doing. As I say, we had a meeting last week in the Border to Coast offices with HMT and MHCLG to put across what we're doing as partner funds within Border to Coast, how that works for us, how we see some of the issues they're putting forward about UK investment or fund or pool consolidation. We're also involved through the PLSA. I sit on the PLSA Local Authority Committee. PLSA had a meeting last week as well discussing that. Border to Coast themselves and all the pools have spoken with HMT and MHCLG. So we are inputting from every possible angle to ensure that they understand what potential consequences there might be from some of their decisions if they're not fully understood. And I think that's all we can continue to do. So hopefully there will be a report out before Christmas that we should then be able to feed back on. My understanding is there will be potentially a consultation after that before something comes into the Pensions Act next year. But as you say, it's a political decision as to what they do. So there is limited input that we can have, but we're trying to be upfront and at the front there to make sure that they understand the benefits of what we've already done and the benefits of what we're looking to do going forward, so that perhaps they just let us evolve into the shape of what they hope us to be, rather than mandating us to do something in a quick period of time.
I've got a recommendation on page 85 that committee review and approve the risk management policy and review and approve the risk register. We do that, please. Are they going to anything? That's lovely. Yeah. We've got to item 8, which is the performance measurement annual report. So that's go. A drink of this.
Chairman. So this is the annual performance measurement report, looking at the longer term performance as measured by the fund's custodian, Northern Trust, also how the fund compares to the average LGPS fund in the PERC local authority universe. Recommendation here being that the committee consider and discuss the report and agree whether any action or additional information is required. So the key points I was going to raise here is that longer term performance of 10 years shows the fund returning 7.9% per annum, just slightly behind the benchmark of 8%, but comfortably ahead of both RPI and public sector average earnings. On attribution over the year, asset allocation was positive. So that means how we've decided to allocate across equities, bonds, property, etc. And the positions, the underweights, overweights we had there were positive. And our underweight position to property was the biggest contributor there. And then, unfortunately, stock selection was negative overall. So this is what the managers actually do once they've got the money. The biggest detractor there was Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley came to our last meeting in September and explained their performance. They've generally been very positive, but private markets had a difficult year, and there is a lag in their performance coming through. Fund is underweight equities and overweight bonds when compared to the local authority universe, following changes agreed to the fund's strategic asset allocation last year to reduce the equities and increase multi-asset credit and private markets. Now, there's always a caveat about apples and pears when comparing to other LGPS funds performance, but the table at 4.9 sets out how Lincolnshire compares with the universe average and the ranking, with 1, 3 and 5 years showing 57th, 13th and 28th respectively, and 10 years at 34th position in the ranking. The chart below, it shows the distribution of returns across funds at 3, 5 and 10 years, and highlights Lincolnshire's position with a red diamond. So I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you. Perhaps I could start with Councillor Allen's question previously.
Please, yes.
The question
Is why does the graph on page 16 of the previous report show negative performance against the benchmark on an annualised basis, and why the graph on page 104 of this report shows a positive one? 10%.
It shows minus 1.3% on the year for the relative performance on page 104. So the fund performed 10%.
3 1, you've got us 0.1 relative performance.
On the 3 years point
Annualised.
screen switch. Let's put the fund up.
In time. It's interesting to see the relative performance against both the price increased. Interesting in itself, but you know what I'm talking about is the performance, relative performance of the fund against the benchmark.
They're different time periods, actually. These are to the end of June. This is to the end of March, so that will be the difference. So I should have thought about that initially. But yes, they're different time periods that we're reporting to.
Talk about 3 years annualised. An idea to have, say, 3 years annualised.
It's 3 years annualised as at 31st of March. The fund update is always to the last quarter that we can report to. So it's still annualised, but it's the end date is different. So there's a quarter gone on one side and a quarter added the other. So
Help us understand it. So it's about doing that, without making reference to it.
well, unfortunately, we don't get this early enough to be able to report it at the July meeting. So it needs to come to this. Just in explaining the question.
The 1.3 doesn't say anything than that. There's no reference in the report, the report we're looking at the moment to the target either. It's in the previous report. So it's not just underperforming to a certain extent, the benchmark, it's underperforming target as well.
Yeah, the way it's reported is against our benchmark, so as opposed to our target. So in the local authority universe, they take all the benchmark returns. They don't look at the underlying funds target returns. So I'm reporting on the information that we're providing as part of the local authority universe. So that won't look at our target. Our fund update does look at the target. So again, they're not identical. But they are what they are. I'm afraid we don't take on board underlying funds targets. It's what's the benchmark done that they're invested against and how they actually performed.
It's good performance. But maybe our performance is slightly, our target, it's not really different to other local authorities.
Each target will be set by the underlying fund as to how they do it.
Also our target, performance, we do to achieve it.
And that's the discussion for the fund. For the
Yes,
committee.
maybe. Something we can't achieve it. The other one, you mentioned that our relative performance across the universe. Where was that? She said it was a
Yes.
dot somewhere.
So that is
Page one.
page 108.
Oh, I see.
So you can see there that
I'm not
over.
very good at colours. I can just see the diamond.
So that's across the various quartiles that's split. So you can see across 1 year, and this goes back to the question that you asked earlier about how do we compare to the other funds?
Yeah.
As I say, the average performance in the universe, looking in absolute terms, was 9.2%, and we did 10%. So
So we're mediocre. It's like better over 3 years, but maybe it just depends which month you're talking about.
this is where it comes down to the apples and pears that I've mentioned previously. It depends on how the fund is, its asset allocation is. If equities are doing really well, the fund has a high allocation to equities, it will be at the top. If equities are doing badly, it has a higher.
Once we use the value of it, yes. Okay.
So, as I say, I think we are above the universe average. We aren't at the top, we aren't at the bottom. We are within, I think, a reasonable place. The issue with how it compares to the benchmark is some of the benchmarks we have are cash plus benchmarks, which over the past few years, as interest rates have risen, have been very difficult. This was explained in September and previously last year in June, I think, when the multi-asset credit team came from Border to Coast to explain it's very difficult to outperform a rising cash benchmark when we are cash plus. If you look at what happened with bonds in 2022, the liability LDLDI issue and the mini budget, I think the main thing is in understanding the underperformance rather than looking at it as a whole. It's understanding where has that underperformance come from and why, and asking our managers to explain that, which we do, and we will have the opportunity at the December meeting when our managers come again to that one. So the committee quizzed Morgan Stanley on their underperformance in September. They quizzed the Border to Coast team in June. They'll have the opportunity to again quiz the Border to Coast equity teams in December. So I think it's more about, do we understand why that underperformance is there? Is the asset allocation correct? And we'll be reviewing that again as part of the 2025 valuation that will be starting next year. I'm not personally concerned we have If you look at absolute returns, if you look at what we're returning compared to RPI, compared to earnings, compared to what our actuary requires us to earn to be able to pay pensions, we are well ahead in all of those measures. So I think that's the most important thing. And then it's understanding, yes, the question is our target too racy? Is it too difficult? And that's a discussion we can bring in when we have the next strategic asset allocation review.
Simply trying to ensure with pay inflation and RPI inflation in terms of the value of the funds and what it's likely to pay. That's one way of looking at things. Or is it, try and make the maximum returns that we've got with the investments that we're responsible for to a great extent? Two ways of looking at it. Both of which are interlinked to a certain extent. And of course, it's always good looking at using hindsight to go back and find out why things maybe didn't go as we intended, even if they may be close to what we. Of course, because we might learn something from that, and I don't expect that we can predict the future to any great extent, because if we could predict the future, none of you would be working here. You'd all be retired, living in Spain, away from the pressure of this current government, no doubt.
I think it's valid points, and as I say, we can build that into the review that we look at and review that objective going forward.
Anybody else? I've got a recommendation here on page 103. The committee consider and discuss the report and agree with the action or information is required. So are you happy on the information?
I had the response I was expecting. Yes.
We can agree that then. Thank you. Move on to item 9, which is the annual report of accounts 23-24. Clearly,
Thank you, Chairman. The report brings to the committee the draft annual report for 2024, and the external auditor will present their audit completion report for the audit of the 23-24. Report is a recommendation that the committee consider the report and discuss feedback from the external auditor. Pension Fund annual report for 2024 is attached at Appendix 10. And you might remember earlier in the year we talked about the Scheme Advisory Board who had issued new guidance for its preparation. As far as possible, we have complied with that new guidance, although there's no requirement for us to do this until the annual report for next year. One area where further work is required for full compliance is around the administration reporting in there, and we'll work with West Yorkshire over the course of the year to ensure that all required information is available for inclusion in the annual report next year. Paragraphs 1.3 and 1.4 set out the changes that have been made to the financial statements, which are included within the annual report over the summer period, so from when you saw them in draft in July. The most significant change relates to updated private market valuation. So this is that change that we've seen over numerous years. And over that summer period, there's been an increase in value of about £7 million. So that's that movement from using earlier valuations to the 31st of March valuations. A copy of the external auditor's audit completion report is attached at Appendix B to the report, and I'll hand over to the team from KPMG to take you through that.
Thank you. So we're over on page 229, and you can find the KPMG report. This report effectively helps us discharge our responsibilities under the Local Audit and Accountability Act and various auditing standards and ethical standards when completing an audit. The report was written a couple of weeks ago, so on page 4 of our document, so 232, it talks about some outstanding matters. Those have slimmed now. So where the top two around the query and cash, material post-closing balance sheet work, journals work has been completed. So subject to the finalisation of our review, the the completion of the council's audit, receipt of management representation letter, signed financial statement. We're in a position where we'll be able to finalise and issue a clean audit opinion. So we're happy to say it gives a true and fair reflection of the financial performance and position of the pension fund. This report takes you through risks, the findings from those risks. I'm pleased, well, I'll say there's no changes to our planned audit approach, which we outlined at our previous pensions committee. So the risks remain the same and the materiality has not changed as well. Noel in a minute will take you through the key areas of risks and the work that we've done to address those risks. And I'll return to cover off some of the appendices and some of the important messages there. But I do think it's really appropriate to put on record our thanks for the support we've had from the pension fund finance team regarding the audit, because without that cooperation and support, you're not going to get to a point where you can deliver an audit opinion in good time. So I would like to put that on the record. Allow Will to kind of go over those significant audit risks and other audit risks to highlight the work that we've done, and I'll return for a couple of the appendices.
Thanks, Vash. So as Vash mentioned, there has been no change in our risk identification and assessment. At planning, we identified a significant risk on management override of control. Test performed includes completeness of journal operation and assessment of high-risk journals. With respect to both, no issues were noted. We also did not identify any suspected or any incidents of management override based on our inquiries with officers. As previously communicated, we have raised a control deficiency on the journals posting, i.e. the segregation of duties for posting and reviewing of journal assessment. I can talk through it later on when we come towards that slide. Apart from it, investment completeness, existence, accuracy, and valuation were identified as other audit risk. We obtained confirmation directly from fund managers and the custodians. No issues were noted on testing those balances. As we have mentioned, there has been an update from May till this period. We have taken into consideration all the latest confirmations obtained to provide this report and confirm that there have been no audit assessments in this area. For testing valuations of level 1 and level 2 investments, we engaged our valuation specialist and do not note any deviations outside the range. And then, of course, for testing valuation of level 3 pooled investment vehicles as well, assess the reliability of unaudited NAV statements by comparing audited and unaudited results. No issues were noted on testing these balances as well. For completeness, existence, and accuracy of cash balances, we obtained direct bank confirmation and do not note any issues. At the time of issuing the results, we had an open query on classification of cash held by the administrator of scheme. But this has also been now resolved based on response by the officers. We're happy to close that query. We also assessed the completeness, existence, and accuracy of contributions into the fund and also the benefits paid by the fund. List of details and the analytical procedures performed to test both these balances did not identify any issues. We further tested the disclosure of actuarial position of the fund by assistance of our own actuarial specialists. The key assumptions applied for calculation of actual population are noted all of reasonable rates. Objectivity of money also, the disclosures for the actuarial position are noted to be abnormal. With the council audit team, we tested the migration of data from the old new journal ledger system at 1st of April 2023. No material differences were noted in the closing balance as per the old ledger system and opening balance as per the new ledger system. These are overall findings that are covered in the report.
if I then just pick up all the matters over on page 251 of the pack, you know, I can confirm there's a detailed appendices in there, but I can confirm our independence. Our fees are set out there in terms of the scale fee. Time of writing this report, we'd sought approval from officers regarding the scope change in terms of the new auditing standard. We then submitted that to the SAA for approval. Additional fees, just over £6,000, has now been approved by the SAA, so we'll be billing that the pension fund shortly. There will be another fee variation regarding the data migration work, but we're just completing the council's audit. What we've tried to do there is we didn't want to do two. We've tried to be as efficient as possible. So rather than doing things twice, we've tried to make sure we combine the work to do it in the most efficient way. So we just need to carve that up, and we'll be in touch with officers regarding that element. In our view, the quality of information that supported our audit, as I mentioned earlier, has been really strong. So I've got no issues to raise there. And like I said, we're in a position, once those final elements are complete, we'll be issuing a clean audit opinion. The appendices do take you through some required communications. I've covered independence, and there's nothing in terms of required communications which is an outlier, which I need to raise with you. We've mentioned the corrected audit misstatement. We've also mentioned the control deficiency, which actually we previously mentioned when we were presenting the audit plan, the risk we were trying to guard against, and there's been no findings impacting on management override. More than happy to take any questions on that. Appreciate it's quite a detailed document with a lot of risks and other matters and other areas of audit focus in, and with a bit of technical details. But happy to take any questions.
Not a bit, I didn't see too many issues. Somebody look at the issue.
Not an issue, but it's a compliment. With the state of public sector audit, to be sat here today with the sector accounts and an audit opinion virtually to be issued, you know, the committee must not underestimate how significant that is, because there's a number of councils that got unaudited accounts for a number of years, and they've not affected that. Is significant. So to be in the position that Lincolnshire County Council is in, both the county position and the pension fund, is significant and needs to be applauded, because there's a lot of effort that goes into this, both from the officers and from the auditors. And to be in this position, it is a very good place to be. There's a lot of councils that are not in this position.
Could you explain what the purpose of the important notice is on page 231?
231, sorry.
Notice. What it's there for? Seems to be a warning.
Yeah, I think that's just, you know, kind of highlights the purpose of a report, the limitations of the work, the status of what works. So we're not here with, you know, so I think in terms of the status of work, it signals it's not quite complete. So providing an update on that, talks about the limitations of work. You know, we're here to perform a job. There's often a misunderstanding between, you know, it's not, you know, it's been well documented, a gap in terms of what people think auditors do and what we actually do. You know, we don't check every single penny, and so on. So I think it's just to draw attention to that, what these limitations for the work performed, because auditors, like I said, we don't check everything to the penny. Our opinion will cover litigation and claims, but as the detailed opinion will mention, you know, it's really only regarding litigations and claims that will have a direct impact on the accounts. So it's just to this is a Lincolnshire specific thing. This is a standard document which we have that important notice in. Now, I'm getting the sense you don't potentially like the.
No. If it's there to say fundamentally that, you know, our comments are only based on what we've seen and what we've been told, and there may be things that we don't know about, fine.
And the scope of our work as well.
Standard get out clause, isn't it, to a certain extent?
I think it's to ensure everybody's aware of our responsibilities and it doesn't go beyond a certain amount.
Derogating the comments that you made, sure, a lot of work's gone into it. Well, the sort of follow-up questions to that I've got is that a certain number of things were noticed in terms of the things that you did look at, whereas the things you didn't look at, that did seem to raise some concerns in terms of your summary comments. Is that right?
In terms of,
Well, you did, you can't just follow on. In terms of risk, so out of the things that you did look at, you did notice some things that you chose to make comments on.
absolutely. So we've required in terms of like the management override controls, you don't have a journal control system in place. So we have to alter, we have to do alternative audit procedures to make sure we've got the appropriate assurance, and we're required to highlight that fact to you. So we've done that by
It's qualifications in terms of your view of our overall status. Is this something that you tend to pick up generally?
in terms of that. Yeah, that control deficiency, that's quite typical. I mean, there's nothing, I think the key thing is there's nothing here of a material nature. We've mentioned the corrected misstatement. When we wrote this report, you've seen the item in red because we're just working through that final query on cash. That's gone away. We've got comfortable with that as well. So all audits will have risks identified. You've got level 3 investments, which we've got some complex judgments and estimates in, which, different professionals will come to different views. We're required to check them out. Just because you've got risks doesn't mean there's issues. It means there's work for us to perform to address those risks.
And fundamentally, I think, the council is aware of those sort of issues. So maybe no particular surprise in terms of what it is that you picked up. That's fine, thank you.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to comment on the control deficiency, if that helps, because this is obviously raised, well, it was raised in the LCC report that went to audit committee as well. The concern or the risk, if you like, is that we have a standard system ERP for our financial management. A journal is effectively a transaction where we can put debit and credit in that potentially has the opportunity to make the council or funds financial position look different to what the reality is. The concern is that we don't have a system control to manage that. I think the fact that I don't allow the director access to the system is probably the first control. But it's a control that we don't believe is necessary to stop the concern of the risk, and we've got other outside of the system actions in place to try and manage that. And as Rasha said, there's been no findings to suggest there's been any management override or controls with that control system being in place. So just to try and assure you, we've had this discussion about this audit committee, that the last audit committee, then Rash's report, the LCC council stated the similar control deficiency. So just to try and provide some reassurance and say that we've reviewed that and discussed it as well.
Or you've got to repeat.
An awful lot of that, Michelle. I think the only thing that I would add to that is the pension fund actually processes a very, very small number of manual journals. The vast majority of our postings which go into the ledger are from Vita Systems. So it's actually a very small element of the transactions. And the area where we are using those manual journals is around our asset accounting, which KPMG are verified in detail on that. We also operate a compensatory control manually on a quarterly basis to review those journals to make sure that they're in line with our expectations. But in terms of our complexity, we're relatively straightforward. So the types of transactions that we're expecting to see are very few in nature. So we're generally comfortable that without that control existing, don't believe that it's causing any particular weakness to the maintenance of our accounting records or the preparation of.
Yes. It does. to get the MG to put that in their report.
I think you,
Whilst we recognise these, you know, they're not significant in terms of the.
It's a system risk and they're right to identify it. We just need to explain what we're doing to make sure that it doesn't become a concern for those that are overdoing.
If I can, so it's an expected control regarding management override. Because management override is a significant risk, I'm required to report that to you. And I'll be required to report that to you next year and the year after as well. So, you know, but, you know, the key thing is we do work to get comfortable. That's not an issue.
And we won't be looking to change the system to put that control in place because that's not an option for finance.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody? And a recommendation, page 111, that the committee consider the report and discuss feedback, external audit. Lovely. Yeah, we've got to figure out the consideration of I'll just read this out for clarity. In accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, following generalities have not been circulated to the press and the public on the grounds that they haven't considered containing general information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972 as amended. The press and public may be excluded from the meeting for consideration of these items. Please, your hand for that, please. Good. Please, Dr. Bentos.